Until the 1880s, the people of Orlando had no permanent burial location. To remedy this, 8 people formed a stock company and purchased 26 acres of land. This became Greenwood Cemetery. Many people who were involved in significant periods of Florida and American history are buried here. This is a document of how archaeologists use photogrammetry in the preservation of cultural landscapes.
I'm Dr. Edward Gonzalez-Tennant, visiting lecturer of anthropology at the University of Central Florida. I'm out here at Greenwood Cemetery to introduce my mortuary archaeology class to the use of photogrammetry for digitally documenting gravestones, digitally documenting heritage monuments, heritage materials, artifacts, archaeological materials. We're coming out here to teach students how to do this digital documentation so that the next generation of archaeologists, the next generation of heritage professionals have these low-cost tools so that they can document resources. This is a good example, right? Gravestones, they're fairly permanent, but they do erode, they do degrade over time. So it's a good case study to come out here and create a three-dimensional snapshot, a digital archive of these resources. So we're using a cemetery as our classroom today, but you could really use any type of archaeological or heritage resource with this approach, with this method. So we're using photogrammetry today to document various archaeological or heritage resources. And by that we mean basically any cultural object, anything that's reminiscent of cultural heritage. So today it's grave markers, it's gravestones, it can be structures, it can be archaeological sites, it could be bridges, it could be anything that humans have built, it could be artifacts, everything in between, entire landscapes even. This is a low-cost method to create a permanent digital record of these resources for the future. So the use of photogrammetry to digitally document heritage and archaeological resources involves several steps. Out here, and this is what the students are doing today, out here we're taking a series of photographs of specific gravestones, individual markers, and we need to organize those photographs in a specific way to allow the software to match those photos and then generate a three-dimensional model from those photos. That's what the students are learning today. They're learning how to order those photographs, take those photographs in a good order or correct order to then allow the software to produce a spatially accurate model. As I take these photos, right, we're wanting to set this up in such a way that the software can kind of follow along. And so one of the great ways to do that is to give the software in its first photo a nice, flat, wide, clear shot, right? Because then as I move the camera around, the software is going to follow those images. Photo 1, match part of this to photo 2. Match part of that to photo 3. So, right, we're looking for at least 30 to 60% of those images to overlap. So I'm just going to start and I'm just going to move it, typically not very far, and I want the center of the image really focused, right, sort of perpendicular to the object. So what I'm just going to try to do here is I just want to make sure that I've got cameras sort of facing this. So I'm just going to do some really high arcs. And doing those high arcs where it's coming down like this, it's going to give me a nice coverage of this, but it's also still going to give like part of that ground and part of the sides, which is going to use to line these photos up. You saw here 2 sort of nice level concentric circles kind of at the low bottom half, bottom 3/4, a slightly higher one, and then just some way to capture direct on views. Now when I take these photos into the software to process, even this small amount of relief here is going to be accurately captured and modeled in the 3D model. So once we've taken these photos in the field, what we're going to do is we take them back to the lab, we put them into a piece of software, a photogrammetry piece of software, and that program will then stitch the photos. It actually recognizes points from the different photos that we've taken surrounding an object. Those photos and that matching is then used to generate a spatially accurate 3-dimensional mesh or model. The software then will also create a photorealistic texture, so it'll give that model the appearance, the same appearance it has in the real world. And that's how we use this process to digitally document these sorts of resources.
The Florida Public Archaeology Network's mission is to promote and facilitate the conservation, study, and public understanding of Florida's archaeological heritage. If anyone is interested in helping with preservation, FPAN provides training and workshops that are open to the public.
If you came across a cemetery that had not been maintained or had not been mapped or documented, you would start by mapping the cemetery, which can take quite a while, as you can imagine. I mean, mapping the footprint of every stone across the entire cemetery could take a while. So when you look at this form, right, it's going to say cemetery name you can fill out, GPS, section number, row number, grave number. Those are all things you would refer to that original map and write down.
Cemeteries are often the final resting place of humans. This makes cemeteries vital sources of data to anthropologists. With photogrammetry and 3D modeling, we now have a low-cost and effective way to preserve our heritage and engage the public.
So a lot of archaeologists who use this technology are just interested in creating that digital record, just preserving what exists today for the future. What I'm interested in doing is taking something like this Celtic cross behind us, bringing that into a virtual world environment, allowing people to interact with it the way they would a video game. So that when you move through an entire virtual version of this cemetery, you would click or interact with gravestones. It would bring up individual histories or biographies of those people who are buried here, but also connect that to broader family histories, embedding that within a larger history of this place, in this case, the city of Orlando, right? And really giving people an immersive and interactive way to explore, in this case, right, this specific history, but really the history of any site or archaeological place on the planet.
It seems fitting to end this documentary with a brief history of the fascinating person associated with this grave marker. This is the human element of our research that transcends scientific applications. As we preserve the cultural landscape, we also discover the sacred.